Our time shows that it's a little after 6 and we want to honor your time, so we'll get started here, and as people come in, they can just filter in. Welcome to 9th grade transition night. We are so happy that you're here. I am Tricia Scow, and I teach two of the sections of what we call EDGE or EDGE. It's EGE, which is English 9, Government, and Economics.
And my name is Chris Warner. I also teach two sections of EDGE, or as we say, EDGE, because we're fancy. We also have some other members of our team floating around. We have Miss B. Hennington, who I think is over here at the door. She also teaches ESL classes. And then Miss Melissa Eisentrager, another one of our team members there. And so we have some people who were unable to be here tonight for various reasons. But welcome. The purpose of tonight is to introduce you guys to our side of what we see high school being, to help answer any questions you all might have about transitioning from middle school to high school, and to strengthen the parent-teacher-student triangle. We feel that making sure that everybody's on the same page or on a similar page is exceptionally important in helping students move forward as they enter high school. And so if at any point you guys have questions, please raise a hand, let us know. We can certainly stop. We have some slides to get through, some intro logistics things, talk a little bit about how we teach writing here, not just in the English classes, but in ideally all classes, and then also how we teach reading, again, ideally in all classes around the school. But if you have a question that's burning on your mind, please feel free to interrupt, let us know. We can certainly try and answer that if we don't already in the natural progression of things. That is a better foundation upon which to build for the students to help them out. If we are on the same page about how grades work, about why we're doing it this way for writing, about why we're doing it this way for reading, then the student is getting a similar message from all angles. And so we're big advocates of having those lines of communication open, answering any questions along the way. But this is definitely, if everybody's pointed in the same direction, it helps kids. And so if we're pulling against or somebody's pulling against, it just makes it more difficult. And so any time we can really help everybody understand where we're going and where we're coming from, we're going to take that opportunity. About EDGE or EDGE or EDGE or whatever. The course is set up like this. It does run as a year-long block. So as the English side, we will see students all year long in English 9. And that is divided into 2 semesters. And so the grades of record become at the end of first semester, which is December, and then at the end of the year, which is late May, early June. And then we share the class with our social studies counterparts. And so during the first semester, they are working through government items, and so that ends at the first semester, and there's a grade of record there. And then we also have economics going on during second semester. So they will always be with 2 teachers. They will be with the same kids the entire year. It's just that at the semester, what we are integrating with changes from government items to economic items. And if you've studied those before, there's a lot of overlap between the two. Federal tax policy is one, like government and economics all wrapped up into one topic. But that is what your kids are sitting through all day. Not all day. One block period a day. The room, if you haven't been in these gigantic rooms yet, you will definitely see those on Thursday. If your students have come home and said, oh my gosh, it's so ridiculously big. It is big. It's like 2 classrooms stuck together. And we have a folding wall down the middle, so we're able to make different configurations. Many of us choose to run the wall open. So we just have 60 kids in front of us, 2 teachers kind of bandying back and forth, much like we'll be doing tonight, integrating and weaving the 2 subjects back and forth. We're not talking over each other, we're not competing for time, or nobody can understand anything, but we just try to interweave the 2 disciplines. We're also able to close that wall, and we could do a very traditional 1 period on each side and then flip. So they would be English for half and then go over to government for half and vice versa. We could run a kind of a collegiate block where maybe they are in English for an entire 2-period day. We wouldn't see them the next day. we'd see them back on Wednesday. So maybe every other day kind of thing. But again, for the most part, I think most of our teams really keep the wall open in an attempt to make the intertwining of those subjects pretty clear for the kids. So that's what they're physically sitting in our class. So here's what we said, just the grading periods. We do have grades coming out at the end of quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. But at the end of quarter 1 and the end of quarter 3, they do just serve as progress report grades for this class, because it is a year-long block class. So I know at the end of October, everybody gets really upset. The end of quarter 1 is coming up, and that's super important. But it does not go on a transcript. It will only go on a transcript in December, and then again in May. Eligibility for people playing sports or doing band. We do export every Thursday. So at the end of school on Thursday, the athletic department pulls our grades, and they look to see that everybody is ideally passing all of their courses. If students on Thursday have 2 or more Fs, they are ineligible to participate the next week. So let's say we pull grades this Thursday. They would then be ineligible to do anything with their teams other than probably study from the next Monday through the next Saturday, because there are many Saturday competitions. And then within that period, there's another Thursday export. And ideally, if the kids have their grades up to no longer having 2 Fs, then they are able to play the following week. So I think that's a great system, because some schools will only export once a quarter, some will export once a month. And so if a kid has some troubles, then they're out for almost an entire season. But here we do it every week, so a kid has a chance to come right back.
So grades do count now, and I know a lot of the students have come in already talking about that. They know that high school counts, and they are starting to be concerned about that. So what goes on the official transcript happens, as Chris said, at semester, not at quarter for this class. So if your student is doing well at quarter, great, we'll just keep on that path. If not, then we'll need to work on some ways to help them throughout the next quarter so that at semester they're doing better. And we do have things in place here that we'll get to for ways that we can support students and help them when they're struggling. But they do need to earn credits for passing courses. They need 23 to graduate, and they need 4 of those to be English credits. So 9th grade English, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade English classes here.
And as you'll see, there is kind of a gap between what you need to graduate and what you need to get into like a CU, CSU level school, and that the students don't have to take a foreign language in order to graduate from here, because they need to have a fine and practical arts, and foreign languages count as that. But they could also earn those fine and practical arts through jewelry, pottery, photography, any music class. But if they're looking at CSU, CU levels, most of those schools require at least 2 years of a foreign language. So I know it's early. You're like, man, we just got here and you're already talking about the next level. Just be prepared. We want to make sure that nobody leaves here. And the counselors will talk with the kids, and we will continue to talk with them, and they continue to advocate that they take foreign language classes. But there are some students who are like, I hate Spanish, I'm not taking anything, I just don't want to do it. And then they get in here, and then a couple years later, as juniors, like, you know what, but I really want to go to CU. Well, then we need to steer them back into that as a credit thing. So just as freshman people, be aware there's that foreign language gap issue with Adams 12 and then CU level schools.
So grading, we do use rubrics throughout the course, and we do have common rubrics that all the 9th grade English teachers use. So you'll see a common rubric for public speaking, for fiction reading, for nonfiction reading, writing, those sorts of things. So we do use those common rubrics, which helps the kids overall, and it helps us when we meet in our teams to figure out how the kids are doing, how our students are progressing. Even though we do use those rubrics and they're standards-based, they still get a letter grade. And so I know that's a big concern coming in from middle school. A lot of the students haven't received letter grades for a couple of years now, I guess, with Adams 12. we still do letter grades. So while we're using the state standards and the national standards that we're supposed to be using, those do convert. So your student will have an A, B, C. We'll just stop there. We know that they need those for college entrance and all of those sorts of things, scholarships and stuff. So we make sure that the grades go along with the GPA and all of that. Students can score 4s on the rubrics. I know I've already had a couple raise their hand and say, is it possible to get a 4? Because when I was in blah, blah, and yeah, we can get 4s. We might not get 4s right away, but we don't come in at a 4 level. We come in at a freshman level, which isn't necessarily a 4 all the time. So that's a shift sometimes for a lot of students and parents. If your students have been getting straight 4s on everything in middle school, that might not happen right away in 9th grade. So we just ask that you're patient with that, because like I tell the students, if you are already getting 4s, then we need to move you up to 10th or 11th or 12th grade, because it's a 9th grade rubric. So it's possible, but it might not happen right away. This came up at a meeting the other day. We were talking about some stuff with the district, and they're having us do some different things with scoring. And we said, well, what if we just score everybody really low at the first of the year, and then at the end score them all really high? Then that looks good, right? But of course, we don't do that. Sometimes it's tempting so that it looks like we've had lots of growth, but we don't really have that issue here. Our kids do grow every year in our 9th grade programs, our 10th grade programs, and on through our AP programs. So we have years and years of data to show that our kids are growing and that what we're doing here is good stuff. And so you won't see an artificially low score in order to get to a higher score later on. You may see a real low score, and in that case it gives us somewhere to go. It gives us something to work on and something to do and something to work towards. So that's how we do the grading. So those rubrics will start to come home with your students. We'll also have them posted on our various blogs and websites so you can take a look at them. But for most of the assignments that your students do, it will come accompanied with a rubric. And they'll get that rubric up front with the assignment, because there aren't any secrets about how we're going to be evaluating things. We do have a cycle of instruction, and I'm sure those of you within the district have heard the terms formative and summative. And we do that. We like to look at it as practice. Formative is the practice stuff. That's what we do on the day-to-day. We practice and we practice and we practice, and then we get to the thing, whatever it is. And so lots of practice leads up to that. You might have a lot more practice than you do the thing, kind of like we do in football or band or video games or whatever else it is that we do. We practice a lot so that we can see where we need to work, and then we get to whatever the summative assessment is. So you'll see lots of practice. Hopefully your students will understand that it's lots of practice. The more they practice, the more we see of their practice work, the more that informs us of where we need to be going with our instruction. Homework counts. Is this news to anybody? I know we've met with some of the middle school teachers around the district, and a lot of middle schools don't do homework anymore, which is a struggle for us, because we do expect the kids to be working and doing some homework. We practice in class. That's with us there to help. Then we want them to go home and do some practice on their own, bring it back to us so we can see how they're doing. It does count as formative work. So when you're seeing that your students have homework, please encourage them to do their best on that so that we can see where they are. That's what informs our practice. So that does count. It's just like you can't earn a scholarship for volleyball if all you ever do is play in the games. You're not going to improve that way. So that's how we look at it. So it does count in the grade book, and if you could help us out with encouraging them to do that, that would be fantastic. One of the things that we find with incoming 9th graders, and it's just something that we see year after year after year, is that they equate struggling with something that's bad. If they have to struggle, then they just want to give up and they think they just can't do it because it's hard. And so one of the things that we talk about in our classes is that it's okay for it to be hard. That means they're being challenged. We know that we need to not challenge them so much that they can't do it. We know that there's a line there. But we also know that if we give them things to do that are too easy, we're going to lose them. And so we do a really careful job of straddling that line between what's too hard that they can't do it, too easy that they don't want to do it. But we talk about that struggle, and that struggle is good, and that's where the learning happens, when they struggle with something. Most students will need to practice the skills in order to master those skills. It's just like with driving or volleyball or video games or piano or anything else. Most of us don't sit down at the piano and play Chopin the first time. I guess there are some people who can do that, but for the most part that doesn't happen. Yeah. So it may take some time. There's a whole learning curve with things that happen. And you know that as adults in your life, that you don't just sit down and do something the first time. And if you do, there's not a whole lot of satisfaction in that sometimes. And so that's one of the things that we really work with your 14-year-olds, is this idea that struggle is okay, and it's okay not to get it perfect the first time, every time. So what do we mean by struggle? It's okay to fail periodically. I don't mean it's okay to fail the class, but I mean it's okay periodically to get something wrong. That's where you learn. You fall down, you get back up and try again. You fall down, you get back up and try again. Where we fail is when we don't get back up and try again. And so we work on that. And it's a mind shift for some of them to do that. It's a safe environment here to fall and get back up, and they've got that support from us to help them get back up. So we look at that as a safe environment. We want them to fail now while we have that safety net versus fail in college where there is no safety net. So that's how we look at it. How do they get back up when they do fail? We need them to advocate for themselves. Let us know what's going on. If we can't figure it out, talk to us. That's one of the reasons that we have this meeting, is so that you all can see us. Because sometimes your students come home and I end up with a green nose with a wart on it, and I really don't. So help them to advocate for themselves. We need to be clear with what they're struggling with, and they need to communicate their issues. And we can help them to do that. We've got ways to talk to them, and we can help them with that. We want to talk with students in terms of effort, not just the outcome. So you tried really hard, but it just didn't work this time. Let's keep trying. Versus, good job for everything they do. And so those are the things that we're working on. Any questions? So we do believe that our middle schools are preparing kids well academically. Please don't think that we don't think they are. But there's a big difference, as you probably know, between an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old in high school. There's a big difference with what you can do with those kids and what you can teach them and what they can learn. So they are preparing kids well academically, but the learning curve increases in high school. It just does. They've got now suddenly 6 or 7 or 8 classes, 6 or 7 or 8 teachers, lots of freedom, lots of friends. Maybe they have an off period. There's all kinds of different and new stuff going on, and it's quite a transition for them. Some reasons for maybe a dropped grade is the different size of the school. As I said before, we have 2,200 plus students in the building right now. I think the last count I heard was 2243, something like that, 2,200. They don't realize they could probably overtake us, because there's way more of them than there are of us. Yeah, if you're a ninth grader in the room, close your ears. There's also the speed of assignments is often different from middle school. We need to get things completed, so they'll have some long-term assignments going on and some short-term assignments going on. And a lot of times it's just their time management, and they need to work on that. We give them calendars, we give them different ways to help with that, but it's just something that they have to learn, just like we do in our jobs. That time management's pretty important. All those freedom of choices that I talked about, we do have high expectations for them, the learning curve, and we're also developing their skills. We're developing their public speaking skills, their writing skills, their reading skills, and sometimes in their lower grades, it's been a lot more about content than skills, and so that also has an impact on their grades sometimes. So we don't give extra credit opportunities, we give plenty of real credit opportunities, and so there's really no place for extra credit. So it's like a Hail Mary pass. Those of you who know about football, and I don't, but I do know that a Hail Mary pass is something you close your eyes and wish. So extra credits, kind of like that, but we will give plenty of real credit opportunities. We want to think economically to motivate students. Right now, these classes are free, relatively speaking. If they have to take makeup credits, they have to pay for those, or you have to pay for those, however that works. So if they have to take summer school, that's a cost. Online courses are a cost. Even if they fail 9th grade English, which nobody's going to do, remember ABC. So even if they fail 9th grade something, then 10th grade they keep going. But then in 11th grade, they have to make up that credit. So now they have to take their 9th grade credit that they missed along with the 11th grade credit that they need. And so that cost becomes squishing some of those classes in to a year and making their schedule more full than it needs to be. And so we want to think economically too about having them do their best this year and pass all their classes and do what they can do.
And we have to clear this up with some students. This is not like middle school where you are like retained an entire year. So if you don't pass one course, you don't stay as a freshman the entire next year. You move on to 10th grade courses, but you need to get that credit somehow. So a student might have to take another English credit somewhere. So while they're a junior taking English 11, which is American Lit, they might also have to take drama or yearbook or speech or lit to film or something else in order to catch up with that. And that's also a lack of ability to take pottery or jewelry or band or maybe something fun that they wanted to. So we certainly want to keep that in mind, and when we move to the academic semester, this comes up a lot. Choices, cost, benefit, that kind of stuff.
So we do have alignment within the English department, both vertically and horizontally. Vertical alignment is between the grade levels, so between 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, we talk as vertical teams and figure out what the 12th graders are doing and how we can help with that even at the 9th grade level. We also align horizontally, which is among our team members. So all the 9th grade teachers sit down and meet 3 times a month, I think, on our early release Wednesdays. And that's when we talk about assignments and rubrics and what the students are doing and how they're doing and how we're doing with our research component or our public speaking component or whatever that is. And that way we are aligning horizontally and we're making sure that students are getting a similar experience no matter which teacher they have. That's one of the pushes this year from our principal, Jim Ellis, is that he wants kids to have similar experiences in similar classes. And we've been trying to do that for years now. We don't think it's fair that a kid gets a different experience in 9th grade, and so we're pretty cognitive of that we need to be working together. But just like there's variation between how you parent, there's also variation in how we teach. So while we are all working on public speaking skills, we might be teaching that in different ways. So keep that in mind. Sometimes some of you have kids with one teacher and cousins with another teacher, or brothers and sisters with different teachers, and everything's not going to be lockstep the same, but the way that we're getting to, the skills that we're getting to will be the same. Life lessons, we really do worry about that at high school, these enduring lessons that people learn. We want our kids and our students to form opinions on an issue that are informed opinions. We want them to look at the different sides of something and be able to form that opinion. We want them to use evidence to defend that position, and we want them to take some risks. And sometimes that's pretty hard for a 9th grader to do, and we get that. So we help them to do that. A lot of times, our 9th graders will come in and they believe something, whatever it is. And when you say, well, why do you believe that? Well, because. Well, because why? Well, because I believe it. So we get into that circular reasoning. And we're not going to try to dissuade you from what you believe, but we do want you to be informed about those ideas and why you believe what you believe and get some information. Self-advocacy, I think I've mentioned this before, it's a big deal with freshmen. We want them to take responsibility for their choices. We want them to practice time management. we want them to experience challenges, and we want them to learn to speak for themselves. Sometimes they'll need your help, and that's okay, but if you can encourage them to speak to us, and then if that's not happening or not working, then by all means, help them out with that. And we're here to help them with that too. So the steps we advise here is have the student talk to the teacher first, then the student and the parent talk to the teacher, then the student and the parent and administrator can all meet if it needs to go that far. The student needs to be involved in the discussions. Now obviously there are extenuating circumstances where the student can't be involved, and we understand that, but for the most part the student needs to be involved. The student's the one in the classroom with us, and so if the student can be involved in those conversations, we find that most problems can be solved pretty quickly. So when should parents get involved in a conversation? After the student has had one with the teacher. If the issue is more grown up in nature, sometimes you'll need to get involved with that. Please hear the adult voice in the student's complaint. And what we mean by that is when your student comes home and is complaining about whatever, because that happens, we know it, listen for the adult in the room too. Because sometimes what they come home and say is not what it was. It's just like, I don't know, they come to school sometimes and tell us stuff. I told a parent once after a sort of a weird conversation, maybe if you believe half of what your kid tells you about what goes on at school, I'll believe half of what he tells me about what goes on at home. So just beware that that happens sometimes, just that they are embellishing sometimes. I'm not saying don't believe your child. I'm just saying hear the adult voice as well. It's another reason for this meeting, so that you can see us. We are all reasonable people. We all have kids, we've all taught for a long time, and we all teach ninth graders because we like them. I know. We do have the option, and every year we all sign up to do it again. So please be wary of bad-mouthing the teacher. I know sometimes you want to. I get it. Make sure your kid's not there when you're doing that, because that does flow over into the classroom. So be careful of that. Your voice is the loudest voice in their head. I know sometimes you don't believe that, but your voice is the loudest voice in their head. You're the voice they hear all the time. Even when they're slamming doors in your face, not that any of your kids do that. You're what they hear. You've had them for 14 years. We have them for 2 hours a day. How to talk to teens? Talk to them often, and especially talk to them when things are going well. Don't wait until they're pouting and not wanting to talk to you. Talk to them when things are going well. And ask them specific questions about what happened at school today. Ask them what their favorite lesson was. Ask them what the teacher said that was silly. Ask them things like that. Don't let them get away with, No, that's what my kids used to want to get away with. What did you do? I know you didn't do, So ask them more open-ended questions. What do you think about what you learned? What surprised you about what you learned? So that will get the dialogue going with them, and that's hard with a 14-year-old sometimes.
So how can you keep up? A couple tech things, and then also, the number one piece of advice, ask your student. And just know that when they say, I don't know, that's a defense mechanism for pretty much everything. The lamp is broken on the floor. What happened? I don't know. They do know, they're just trying not to get in trouble. So they do know what has happened, because many of us provide them weekly calendars ahead of time, saying here's what we're going to cover through the week. And many of us keep different blogs or wikis or web pages so that as soon as we are done with a class, we post exactly what we've done. And those are public so that anyone can see them. You can go to our class wiki, anybody in the community, and see exactly what we did. Every single worksheet we looked at, every single link we clicked, you can see what we did pretty much minute by minute. So if you're that curious or want to take ninth grade English again, you can take that. You can see what we did. But definitely, Infinite Campus, that's good for the grades, for just, did they turn in an assignment, did they not, how they do on that kind of stuff. And sometimes we will send out mass messages to our class in specific or to everybody as a whole. But that's kind of all Infinite Campus is good for. If you want to see the day-by-day, minute-by-minute stuff, check out our blogs or our wikis or web pages and just kind of click along and see what we did. So that is a good way that if your kid is still giving you, I don't know what we did today, you can say, well, oh yeah, well the wiki says you read these pages and you have a quiz tomorrow. Are you ready? You know, I don't know how militant you want to be about that kind of thing. That's totally on you guys. But we make that effort to make it as transparent as we possibly can. So here's what our class wiki looks like, just so you can kind of see. That basically it's just a linear event of what happened. Okay, so here's August 21st, we did a seating chart, we took a survey. Do you want to see what survey we took? There it is, Word document, you can download it. We listened to a song, here's what we did with it. Do you want to hear the song? There it is. So you can see exactly what we did, with as much detail as we possibly can. Tricia tends to keep a blog, so a little bit more narrative in structure, but it again shows what they did day by day. And so it's more narrative, mine's just linear, but again, our hope is that we are keeping those lines of communication open, so if you're like, my kid's not coming, doesn't understand what they're supposed to do with this massive project at the end of Lord of the Flies, they can go here under Massive Project for Lord of the Flies and find out what that is. So they would have been handed a hard copy, they have this, they have been made acutely aware of its existence, but if you feel like you need to step in and say, well, here's the worksheet itself, there they are.
And those are, again, all linked from the Legacy page, so if you go to Legacy Teacher Web Pages, then you can click, and mine will link to my blog, Chris's will link to his wiki, other teachers link to a Google site, so we all keep some form of communication, and they're all linked there through the teacher web pages.
And so one observation we've made, I know we said this before, but kids do sometimes struggle at first coming to high school because of a lot of variables changing at once. The type of writing we do changes, the size of the school, the free time, the choices, and all that kind of stuff. All is changing at once. And so kids sometimes struggle at first, but many of them do figure it out. I'd say 98% of the kids I see in class really do figure it out pretty darn quickly. And they kind of just move on their way, and then they're in the zone, and they know what they need to do. They understand the routine, they understand the rigor, the challenge, and where to go for help, and how to get it from peers at peer tutoring, and how to get it from us at academic support time, or off periods, or email, that kind of thing. So we just try to keep those lines open so kids are able to get whatever they need. And if they're struggling, find their currency. Probably not money, but what's their thing, okay? Well, no cell phone for a week, no American Ninja Warrior for a week, or whatever their thing is. The only thing we ask is that please be wary of making deals with them that involve us. Things like, if you don't pull this up, you're not going to Hawaii.
You don't have an A in 2 days. No Disney World.
And everybody in the room knows you're not going to leave them home. And if you do, wow, kudos to you, that is hardcore. That is awesome. But, that just doesn't happen. But they come in like, oh my gosh, if I don't have a B by this time, my car insurance goes up and my parents will kill me. So sorry, I'm not just going to artificially give you a B for the good driver discount. I can't do that. So, all those deals are at home, that's great. If you need to let us know, you're holding Disneyland in front of them, that's great, but please don't make it contingent upon us. Yeah. And so just in general, I think email communication with us is best. We have desks with phones, but we rarely sit at them because we don't get our own classrooms. So we are in little cubicle farm kind of rooms, so we have our own little desk with a phone, but we're never there. We're usually sitting at a computer. So email is definitely the best way to get a hold of us. Certainly will return phone calls. I received a carrier pigeon once. You do what you need to do. But we will usually push for student involvement in that communication process. Because 9 times out of 10, if they just come and ask about something, we can solve it in 2 seconds. But when somebody comes in from the outside and they're like, what about that 5-point assignment from September? And then we have to go back and look, and we have to figure it out, and we're like, is it this assignment? You're saying, no, it's not. If Johnny was there, we would have been done in 2 seconds. And we try not to be scary at all, and we mean that without any sort of sarcasm. We really want them to speak with us, and they can speak with us. So I know they're going to be like, I can't, they're too scary, they're too big, too nervous. They can do it. And it might be difficult in September, but when a question arises like, what about this grade? I'll probably say, well, let's have Johnny come in and let's solve this right here and be done. And then they're good.
So how do students learn in high school? They learn through reading, lots and lots of reading, novels, short stories, poetry. And what's new to many of us, and I put myself in that same boat, because when I went to high school, English was mostly fiction. And we studied novels, and we studied poetry, and we studied plays, and that was about it. We didn't worry too much about nonfiction in our English classes. With the new standards, state and district, nonfiction takes much more of a role in the English class in teaching students how to read nonfiction and the structures of nonfiction and how to think about the ideas that are being posited in the nonfiction that they're reading. And so that's an addition to English, probably since most of you went to high school. I know certainly since I went to high school. So we do all of the typical readings that we used to do and nonfiction in addition to that. They also learn through writing. They write essays, poetry, paragraph responses, note-taking. I know my students will keep blogs. Other students do other things technologically. They do some wikis, lots of different things going on, and we're working on writing skills through those vehicles. We've talked a little about oral expression. They do short speeches, long speeches, impromptu speeches, and prepared speeches. We talk about the way you present yourself when you are giving a speech, the way that you stand in front of a room when you give a speech, how you should be dressed when you're giving a presentation. All of those things come up. We will use technology. We will also produce technology. So when we are having the students blog or wiki or any of those other things, we'll take them to a computer lab and teach them how to do those technological things. We do expect that students have access to computers, even if they don't have it at home. We have plenty of it here. We have 5 computer labs plus the Library Media Center where they can access technology. People use Turnitin.com. We use the class websites, the wikis, the blogs, all of those things that we've talked about before. So we've talked about the computer labs. We also have some wireless labs now. We have 4 or 5 labs worth of Chromebooks that we can bring into the classroom. Lots of different opportunities for students to use the technology.
So controversy. Let's just change gears all of a sudden. It's at the high school level, students are exposed to more challenging works, more challenging ideas, because as they move through Piaget's developmental levels, they should be able to deal in the abstract, a little bit more than the concrete. And so we're seeking to challenge them with new ideas, new structures, new pieces they're going to read. And so it's difficult to put your finger on what exactly is going to be controversial in any one unit. We've had parents raise issues with us reading the Constitution, saying, why would you read that in class? Well, it is a government class. It is the foundation of our government. We should probably have them read that. People have questioned certain novels throughout, short stories, poetry, and it's difficult for us to predict that any one line is going to upset any one person. So we are pulling our curriculum from the national, state, and district standards, their guidelines, our 20 years of experience each, our Common Course team expectations, what the district is asking for, what skills are necessitated. And so we are balancing all of those things to ensure that we are challenging them appropriately within that, throw out another name, Vygotskian zone of proximal development. We're not pushing too hard, we're not pushing too easy. And so we need to find that sweet spot of what's going to push them. Sometimes in government classes, people are concerned about, well, why would you talk about this political party or this political party? And again, our goal is not to convert or to preach or to sway, but it is to inform. And so as we bring those topics up with freshmen, sometimes this may be the first time they've had an adult outside of their home speak with them about politics or about government or about economic theory. And so it's a balancing act of, you've had them for 14 years and they're totally hearing what you guys are saying, but we are asked to cover these things, to challenge them with some things. And it's fascinating to see the students work, because they hear something new, and a lot of them are like, well, that's not what I hear at the dinner table. Like, okay, well, what do you think about that new idea? Yeah, I still don't like it. Why? And then fill in the blank, and they're able to defend. Great, that's awesome. You've won argumentation essay. Okay, it's not about getting what we think or whatever. It's, can you form an argument, defend it with evidence, and move on? Somebody's like, well, my parents want to vote for so-and-so or so-and-so. Great, knock yourself out. Our job is to make an informed electorate. And so at some points, controversy seeps into class. We run it either through discussion groups or through journals. Kids are able to express their thoughts and their questions and their concerns, and we do it in an open and a mature environment. It's not standing up and screaming and pointing at people like some of the things on TV that we see. We're not leaving negative comments like the end of news articles. It's a mature, grown-up conversation about whatever topic is at hand. Our goal is not to anger them. It is to continue to expose new things to them. Some kids have never been outside of Broomfield. And it's fascinating that there's a big world out there. They're like, you mean there's Denver? There's people who here, or there's another state? Yeah, absolutely. So the ninth grade's a really pivotal year because it just gets bigger. And so we want to be really respectful about how we present things, but sometimes kids get angry, parents get angry. That's where we need to keep those lines open. We're not out to, again, sway or preach or convert or anything like that. And so like we said, this is the same exact thing. How do we deal with it? We pick text based on state and local standards, that kind of stuff, and then provide a rationale as to why we're doing it. So you can read that if you want. All right, so here's how we teach and talk about reading and literature. This kind of goes hand in hand with controversy sometimes. When kids are in elementary and middle school, they are learning how to read. And here the change becomes reading to learn. So we don't stand in front of them every single day and tell them everything they need to know. There will be times where we'd say, all right, your job is to learn about the 14th Amendment. Here's a reading on it. Go ahead. And then we'll answer any clarifying questions, but that reading is their exposure to something. So it is a fundamental change where in elementary school they're working on phonics and phonemic awareness and all those 5 pillars of literacy. But as they come here, it's reading to learn. So that is a change for kids in high school. Why do we study literature? Because in the English classroom we do spend a lot of time reading fiction, and some people would say, well, wait a second, why don't we spend all our time on informational texts? The understanding the 14th Amendment. That's what's really important. Understanding different economic theories, non-fiction. Those are exceptionally important, and that is the joy of the integrated classroom. That my partner can be saying, hey, here's a reading on such and such an amendment. Here's how the Supreme Court works, or here's how Keynesian economic theory works, and have the kids read about that. But then we can balance that with pieces of literature. And yes, it is to be entertained. Ideally, there's some amount of enjoyment in fiction, hearing a story, seeing Scout grow up into Kill a Mockingbird, things like that. But it is to learn about ourselves, to experience our world. We can't experience everything one-on-one, so we can experience it through the characters of literature. We wouldn't want to expose our students to every evil in the world, but if they can see a character who's struggling with that through the book, then maybe they can learn from that experience. We don't have to send them to war to explain something. They could read about it, they could get a glimpse of something and understand it. We don't have to put them in poverty to understand it. We can read about it and get a glimpse of it and make them better attuned to the world that they're living in. Because again, some of these kids haven't been outside of Broomfield. They've gone very much through Adams 12 and they've seen one element of our society. So another way to open their eyes is through literature. And so we talk about theme, which is, what is the author trying to teach us? What is their comment about life? And so this is what we're looking for as we study literature. We are looking for plot, characters, the story arc, but we're also challenging students to think more abstractly. What am I supposed to learn from Scout's troubles in To Kill a Mockingbird? I'm not her age. I don't live in not living in the 1930s. I'm not living in the South. But what can I learn through her struggles? What can I learn from Junior's struggles in the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian? I'm not a Native American, I don't live on a reservation, I don't live in Washington State, but what can I learn through his struggles? And that's the theme, where authors are trying to say, hey, consider, reader, this perspective. And so we're pushing kids to think abstractly and try to find that. And so all of our work with illusions or similes or metaphors or imagery is to help illuminate that theme. Because authors make choices. They choose to make this character this way to teach us a lesson. They choose to make Voldemort not change to teach us a lesson. But we have to enlighten students that that's how literature works. Because before it's very concrete. What is the story? Now we need to move to the abstract, which is, what can we learn from this? That's kind of what we're pushing for. So the 9th grade curriculum is a mix between, what can they do now and what can we push them for? And we are looking to propel the students into that next level. So what can they do on their own? What is just the comfortable reading level? What do we need to be in the room for to help push them a little bit and kind of move them along that reading spectrum? And students sometimes say, are we ever going to read a book with a happy ending? Well, the world is a challenging place. And we have scoured the literature and tried to balance that with Lexile levels and what is appropriate for the curriculum and what is appropriate for 14 and 15-year-olds. And by the time they get to that level, many books don't end happily. Even Where the Red Fern Grows. It's sad. Old Yeller, Sounder, basically any book with a dog. So, it's not like we're trying to let's read every depressing book we can find and just make your 9th grade year horrible. But many times we learn from the challenges of these characters. Nobody wants to read a book where the character woke up and had a great day for an entire year and nothing bad happened to him. Those books don't exist. So we're trying to balance all of these things together. All right. So going back to the controversial, tying that in with themes. Authors have positive messages. That's their point, I would argue, for most pieces of literature. They're trying to teach us a positive thing. And they might use some dark moments to teach that. Again, if everything's perfect, why would I care? Oh, great, you had another great day. What am I supposed to get? Because my day's really tough. If we can have those pieces of controversy in there, or those darker moments, or those challenging moments, or the language issues, it helps the students understand more of what's going on. It is more realistic, and they relate better to that. We can't read the Dork Diaries forever. Yes, I see you reading. My kids read them too. They're great. But if we were reading the Dork Diaries of 9th graders, there'd be questions, right? So we need to balance all of that. So what if you as a parent object to the content? I'm going to ask you, what is your concern with the book or the piece of content, and what is your students' concern with the content? And see if we can flesh those out. Because this is kind of that growing moment. What is your issue? What is their issue? This is, what do we believe at our home? And how does this differ? And how does this challenge that? But oftentimes kids are pretty tough and pretty smart about things, and we don't give them enough credit for them to be able to say, you know what, I hear that word, still don't like it. I've been taught at home that's not a great word, and boom, I'm not going to use it. Great. They're hearing your family values from home. They're not just all of a sudden, going to be swearing up and down the halls because they read one word in one piece. Or they're not going to fundamentally change because of something they read. But certainly, if you feel like this book is just not appropriate, please let us know, or the student can let us know, and we can provide an alternate to that student. We don't make a big deal out of it. We don't set off fireworks and be like, oh, look, Johnny doesn't want to read this one. Nope, we just want to make sure that Johnny gets what he needs in terms of the kind of level book, the content we're trying to talk about, and go from there. So if a student requests an alternate, or you guys do, we just kind of move on.
So we look at writing as an art. It's an art and a science, and some writing items are open to your interpretation, and this is the art part of that: word choice, sense, variety, voice. And then I think what'll be coming up next will be the science part, which is, these are the non-negotiable items. There is correct punctuation, there is correct spelling, correct organization for the most part. You want to be using the correct transitions and those sorts of things. And we also know that examples are needed. So we give lots of examples when we teach writing, lots of opportunities to fall and get back up and fall and get back up and try again. So the first piece of writing that they do, and the second piece, and the third piece, and the fourth piece might not be perfect. We're going to work on that. And we're going to work on it in little chunks along the way. We use an they say, I say structure. We want the kids, the students, I should start calling them students and not kids, they are not baby goats. The students, we want them to know that whatever ideas they're having, probably already lots of discussion around those ideas exist. And we want them to be able to enter into those discussions in a logical, rational manner. And that's what the writing is often all about. Lots of times students are seeking to write a valid response. Was this the right? Is this right? Well, sometimes, I guess. But what do you think? Did you support your opinion? That's what we're looking for. Do you have rational, logical support for why you believe that, or why you think that, or why that's a good argument?
And as we're going through this, has been a push at our school, school-wide, to improve the how of writing instruction for kids and the how of reading instruction for kids. So they should be reading to learn in their biology classes and in their math classes. If you've seen the textbooks that they use, very reading heavy, very writing heavy. So this is definitely not just an English thing. This is a school-wide literacy push that we've been embracing for the last couple of years. So this does apply to as many contents as we can possibly make.
We look at it as this super highway of ideas, and these ideas go on down the highway and we merge in with those, and then sometimes we merge on off. And so as kids or students are writing and learning and learning and writing, they're merging in and out of that super highway of ideas. That's our metaphor there. Their paper serves as the on-ramp to that highway, whatever it is they're writing, their essay, their paper, their paragraph, their free responses, whatever it happens to be. They're taking what they've learned. They are letting us see how they form those opinions, and they're writing their thoughts about it. So they're not just learning to write, they are also, just like with reading, writing to learn. And that's a big push that we have. So valid means they want one right answer. Just one. And there's not always one right answer in writing. They also want to guess what's in our head as the right answer and then give us that. And usually there's not one in there because we want them to enter the conversation about whatever the ideas are that we're talking about. Lots of times there are many possible interpretations to a text, whatever they read, and we talk through lots of those, and we have them write about lots of those interpretations, and there's rarely one right answer when they're writing, and that's hard for them sometimes. So we want them to prove a point, take a side. So for example, they might get topics such as the 14th Amendment provides enough protection for all parts of American society. That's arguable. There's not a right answer to that. You might have a right answer to that, and it's right for you or it's right for your family, but somebody else could have a different answer for that. And so we want them to enter this conversation. We want them to know enough about it so that they can enter the conversation. The bicameral legislative system is efficient and is best for America. I don't know. A flat tax would pull America out of its current recession faster than a gradual tax. So these are some items that your students might get to think about, research, find out some stuff, and enter the conversation. Academic paper requirements, this differs from middle school, at least when we meet with the middle school teachers. These are the big differences that we find. We want them, for the most part, when they're writing formal papers, to write in a formal academic voice. They're not writing to their friends. We don't want them to use slang and abbreviations. We want them to pay attention to their word choice. Lots of times I talk to them about the ways that they talk to their friends in the hall. versus the way they talk to me when they come in the classroom. And they recognize that that's different. And it's the same with their papers. We're asking them to ramp it up and write for an academic purpose using academic language. We want them to write in the third person a lot. Not always, but we try to get them to third person writing. And I will tell you that for ninth graders, this is tough. Because as a ninth grader, I don't know if any of you know this about your students, but they're a little bit egocentric sometimes. It's all right here. So they write a lot about I, me, my, I think, I believe. Well, okay, that's a start. But now we want to move you away from that, which is weaker, into a stronger third person writing. So we work on that a lot. 2 words in ninth grade. Writing is circular. There's the pre-writing, the thinking, before you actually start writing, the writing something down, and then going back and doing it again. It's a very circular activity. Pre-writing, they can outline, they can web, they can free write. We teach them lots of different ways to get their ideas on paper. Then they go into drafting. This is hard for all of us, actually, because a lot of times we put something on paper and it's there. It's a little easier when you're writing with a computer because you can just backspace and then pretty soon it's a blank page again. But when you're actually writing, you get attached to that sometimes. So then we ask them to draft something, and then we're back to number 1, revising again, and looking at those ideas and how can we make those stronger. We're shifting ideas, we're shifting content, we're filling in the gaps, and some of your students are going to get really frustrated with that. They just do. I get frustrated with that sometimes when I have to go back and rewrite something, but it's always better. So we're working on that with your students. Drafting, revising, drafting, a lot of times that's it, I'm done. They just get stuck and they would just want to turn it in and be finished with it. They feel that their effort should be enough. And I always say to the kids, I could try as hard as I wanted for years to come to play for the Denver Broncos. It ain't going to happen. No matter how hard I try, it's not going to happen. Sometimes we just got to keep trying. And we got to get as good as we can be for us, and not for the Denver Broncos, but for me. And so we just keep working through that process. Proofreading and editing should be the last step, and a lot of times people think this is the first thing we do. We make sure it's all fixed and pretty, and that's really the last thing that we work on is that proofreading and editing process. We look at the word choice, the sentence structure, the voice, that's where that level of formality comes in, and we work through all of this with them in class. Common issues. Students rush through the paper and turn it in. My favorite is when they write it really sloppy in class and then they go home and type it exactly as it was written. But now it's pretty, so they turn it in. So we discourage that. We do expect that students are doing some of the revision work on their own time. It's a really good opportunity for you to get involved with some writing that they're doing. Instead of just letting them though hand that paper to you and say, here, read my paper, have them read that paper to you out loud, or read it out loud to them, because then they will hear whatever mistakes or miscommunication has been happening. If they just read it to themselves, they know what they meant to say, and they read it that way. So reading aloud is one of the best tips I can give you as far as helping your student revise that paper.
And that's where, if you say, I don't understand what this means, and they have to say, well, what I meant was, that's a problem. Because they don't travel home with us for us to grade these things, so we can just ask them, like, well, you left out a section, what do you mean here? Oh, what I meant was this. So they have to put it in writing. If you don't get it, we're not going to get it either. So if you're like, I don't understand what you're saying, that's not an A paper right there. So you don't have to know comma placement or semicolon placement or whatever. If it doesn't make sense to you, it's not good enough. And so that's just a way you can continue to kind of push them along without having to know the ins and outs of every piece of grammar that we do.
So again, students feel that effort equals success. I tried really hard on this. I worked on it for 15 minutes. Okay? Well, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And so we push them to keep working on it. We look for logic of thought and coherence of arguments regardless of effort. And some students can write a paper and it's coherent and it's logical, and it doesn't take them hours and hours and hours, and other students need more time to get those ideas down. And so it's a fairly individual deal. I can't say every student in my class needs 3 hours to write this paper. Some of them might need 3 hours to write the paper, some of them are only going to need 1, some of them need 6. It's very individual. We do offer rewriting options. Lots of times, at least in my class, and this is where sometimes we differ, a student will turn a paper in and maybe it's not as good as they want it to be, and I go through the rubric and work on that and give it back to them, and then they want to rewrite that paper. Generally, we've moved on in content, so they're not going to rewrite that paper, but they'll have another opportunity to write another paper. And that opportunity is coming up just around the corner. So they can use those same skills, they can use those same lessons that they learned and write the other paper. That way we're not always working backwards. So we can keep up. So there's always another opportunity. And I think probably most teachers work that way. Lots of times what we see though is that students don't take advantage of that opportunity. They don't go back and look at the mistakes they made or the comments that we make and make those changes on their next paper. They just do the same thing over again. And so we encourage them to look at that feedback and talk to us during academic support so we can help them out.
We just wanted a couple more logistics and then kind of wrap it up here. We talked about MLA formatting here at the high school, so they need to cite their sources. We don't want them plagiarizing. So if you're like, well, in my grad school, I used APA. That's totally great. At this level, we have chosen to use MLA. So there is a guide you can help your student. You can buy the book, you can go to many places online, but if you are helping them to format things or how to cite their sources, we use MLA here. The nuances aren't really the point. The point is make sure you're not stealing stuff. You can't just copy and paste. Okay, so the theory of citing is what we really focus on here, and then as they move up the ranks, the 10, 11, 12 teachers refine that and get into, where does the period go, where does the comma go, that kind of stuff. We just don't want them plagiarizing, and that's very difficult because technology allows us to copy and paste.
It's so easy.
In a way that we never had. I think we had to research by finding a periodical guide, going to a card catalog, and finding a book. And you can't just copy and paste that. Somebody put it, a tsunami of information. It's all over them. They just need to figure out how to swim through it and properly take notes and properly cite things. So we just don't want them plagiarizing. We will show them how to avoid that kind of stuff. All right, the point is, we use turnitin.com as a way to turn in papers, some of us. It does offer 3 parts. One is a plagiarism checker. One is the peer review, so that actually papers can be exchanged anonymously and kids can make comments on them. And then my favorite part is the grade mark, where I can write comments on their paper. So rather than having to read my chicken scratch scribble handwriting, I can type it and put things exactly where it needs to be. But it does also give us a computerized look at what could potentially be plagiarism. It's a computer. We're still smarter than ant. But it does let us know when kids buy their essays from freeessays.com, which I've had happen. It comes back 95% as from this site. I click one thing and it's like, is this your essay? It's like, okay, you can't cheat in that way. That's what we've got. Structure of stuff we talked about, classes, grading, formatting, kind of where we go with reading, where we go with writing. That's kind of about it. So if you'd like to take off and go, you're certainly more than welcome. If you want to go out there and talk about how brilliant things are, you got to get out of here right now, that's totally fine. If you'd like to stick around for any question and answers, we'd be happy to answer questions for the good of the group. Or if you feel like you want to come down and just get some personal things answered, we'd be happy to do that. So why don't we give just a minute or two, we got to go. Yeah, totally, thank you for coming. If you want to stick around with any questions, please come on up and let us know. Thanks.